In November, at a new venue still being built in Cardiff, two teams will meet in the final of what has become, in just a few years, the fourth most watched sports event in the world. It will be only the fourth time the event itself has been staged. Already the Rugby World Cup has come a long, long way. The Rugby World Cup's immediate impact on its first appearance in 1987 stands in contrast to the length of time required to actually get to that moment. So quite simply, what took so long?
Probably because of the conservative nature of the game. Rugby football had changed at international level very little over the previous 50 years. And it maintained, if you like, to a certain extent, a closed shop.
The reluctance of some Northern Hemisphere unions to embrace the World Cup stemmed in part from a perceived risk of professionalism and a dilution of their powers as the leading playing nations.
It was, if you like, venturing into unknown territory. We had the Bledisloe Cup. We had major championships in South Africa and 5 nations in Europe. And it was a very comfortable world that rugby found itself in.
The creation of the World Cup helped to extend rugby's boundaries. Television coverage of this year's event, for example, would be seen in 140 countries. Where once there were small rugby-playing outposts, there are now whole new rugby-playing nations. It's unlikely to have been what the Australian and New Zealand rugby unions had foreseen when drawing up proposals for the first World Cup in 1984. Under pressure to produce a spectacle that would help stem the flow of players to professional rugby league, they eventually secured the support they needed at a meeting of the International Rugby Board in March 1985.
It was so new and so innovative, really, that nobody quite knew what to expect. And it was obviously split between Australia and New Zealand as well. And very much had been driven by New Zealand and Australia. They were the people, the unions behind the idea. I think everybody set out into the unexpected, really, not quite sure what it was going to be like and how it would develop.
That's what people forget about the World Cup now. It's so well established and it's been such a success. Going down in '87, we weren't even sure if Scotland and Ireland, for example, were going to go up until weeks before.
In 1987, at the time of the first World Cup, there were many unexpected events. People did not know exactly what the World Cup would represent. Certain nations were still not sure that they would be able to participate.
There was a lot of knockers before it, and it'll never work, and we'll have one tournament and that'll be it. But the success of it and the interest in it really provided a wonderful stepping stone for rugby onto the world stage, in that every 4 years there's this event.
Once given the green light, the Australian and New Zealand unions had barely 22 months to organise the event, which was scheduled for May and June 1987. Participation was by invitation, and among the nations not listed in the 16 teams were Western Samoa and Korea, 2 teams with strong claims for inclusion. The Italians were invited, and they lined up against New Zealand as the Rugby World Cup show finally got underway at Eden Park, Auckland on May the 22nd.
Referee Bob Fordham of Australia signals, and Grant Fox begins.
In the absence of South Africa, it was Australia and New Zealand who began as favourites, and on the evidence of the All Blacks opening game, it was not hard to see why.
Check. Fox, Taylor, Stanley along the chain, Cohen, Gallagher in that.
Making his test debut against Italy was fullback John Gallagher, whose best memory of that match remains the sensational second-half try of John Cohen.
We scored about 3 or 4 tries in the space of about 5 or 6 minutes. We went through a purple patch in the second half, and I think JK's was one of the middle ones. As soon as he got it, you know, I was actually started off running behind him. And by the time we got to the 10-metre line, I just knew he was going to score a try.
48 points, and they might be looking for 50. John Cohen.
He done it twice that season against Queensland and against Fiji. And, you know, so it was no surprise really to the players. You know, but obviously to the worldwide audience, it was a fantastic try, and it was a fantastic try. But he's already spoiled us already that season.
Cohen was one of several outstanding talents in the All Black side that dominated international rugby in the late 80s. Stepping into the line alongside him, Gallagher appreciated his talents more than most.
John Kerr there, he was always hungry for the ball. You know, all he wanted was to have the ball in his hand. He had amazing steps off both feet and a very strong handoff. The guy was, you know, he always lied about his weight. He always said he was 15 stone, but you know, he must have been about 18 and a half stone. He was 6'3", big shoulders, big legs.
The All Blacks won by 70 points to 6, a margin of victory that raised concerns at the number of potential mismatches between established and emerging nations. Although there were several one-sided scorelines, there were also many excellent contests. An example was the Romania-Zimbabwe game the following day.
Well taken by Brown. Cut out his opposite man, the new fella on the field, Eon. Zimba, now there's room here for Richard Zimba, and there's the overlap. Zimba on his own. Oh, lovely stuff. Can he get there? What a try!
Trailing at one stage by 20 points to 9, Romania staged a comeback. Leading the charge was Mircea Paraschif.
Must be a try, yes!
It was certainly a key moment when I scored. Although we'd missed a chance earlier on when we had a penalty close to the line, and I tried a move with my teammate, Florica Marariu. He was a great player, but in fact he died during the revolution. On this occasion, I decided to go on the blind side, and that helped spur the team on to win.
Some great tries by the Romanians rounded off an entertaining afternoon as the Zimbabweans were edged out in the final few minutes, 21-20. Now a coach, Paraschif is preparing the national side for their appearance in Pool E alongside Ireland, Australia and the USA later this year. To teams like Romania, the World Cup and its qualifying games are key to their development.
Our participation in the World Cup is very important. The main reason for this is that rugby in Romania is still a somewhat small and limited world. To confirm the talent of Romanian players, we need this kind of experience, so that within the laws of the game, they can really take on the stronger nations.
Bineînțeles, în limitele fair play-ului, cu alții mai puternici.
Also slowing down with the big boys for the first time in '87 were the Canadians. After comfortably beating Tonga, they held the lead for a time in their Pool 2 game against Ireland, only to fade in the last 20 minutes, eventually losing 46-19.
Drop kick again from Reese.
Firstly, to be put in that environment to be able to play what were, you know, the leading nations of the world, was remarkable, and it was, especially for those guys who only did 87 World Cup, it was a great pinnacle to their rugby careers that have been principally in Canada. It was a sniff of an upset, which we didn't quite make happen, but I think we learned from that, and when we moved into further World Cups in '91 especially, we didn't give up the chase with 15 minutes to go.
In Pool 1, Australia's campaign had begun amid controversy in their 1906 defeat of England. Referee Keith Lawrence felt David Campese had grounded the ball for a try, but few others shared his opinion.
Second try in a test, it is! No! The referee's awarded the try, but I don't think he got the ball down. There's no way he got the ball down.
In their last pool match, the Australians were not at their most convincing either. Against a talented Japanese side, they fell behind 3 times as their opponents surprised them with their speed and commitment.
Look at this! There's a big line on the left. It has to be another try to Japan. Katsuki!
Japan played very, very well. They were very committed, and they're always very fit side, and will never stop sort of tackling, and they're very aggressive in that.
Australia keeping the ball alive.
We got there in the end, and it was actually, in the end, it was quite a good score. I think we scored about 42 to 24 or something, but it was pretty nerve-wracking throughout the game when we went behind a few times, and the crowd, the Australian crowd, sort of were thinking, well, hold on, this is not the Australian team we're wanting to see, but we survived and got through.
Also on the receiving end in the quarterfinals were Pool 4 runners-up Scotland, beaten 30 points to 3 by the All Blacks. In reaching the semi-final, the New Zealanders seemed to have barely broken stride, but the scheduling of the match for Sunday would prove a dilemma for their number 7 flanker Michael Jones, whose religious beliefs prevented him from playing on that day. Jones stood firm.
Before the World Cup, there was no games on a Sunday, and so we never actually thought it'd be a problem. You know, but when it was obvious the game was going to be played on a Sunday, and then after that a lot more test matches were played on a Sunday, then obviously it became a problem, but Michael made a stand, and you know, he always got the full support of the team, as well as the national selectors.
Lining up against the All Blacks would be Wales, 16-3 winners over England in an undistinguished match in Brisbane.
Jones, who'll win the ball? Jones will be there first, will he? Yes!
I think it's fair to say that England went into the 1987 World Cup with a greater level of expectation than perhaps the Welsh team did. We obviously knew that it was going to be a typical Wales-England encounter. As I say, the game wasn't a great spectacle, but from a Welsh Rugby Union and the team point of view, you know, it was a win that we were very glad to have.
The quarter-final between Fiji and France was a far more entertaining match. 3-0 down, the Fijians took an early first-half lead. Being matched out wide, the French reverted to their forwards and regained the lead, which they were never to relinquish. They were, though, impressed by their opponent's verve.
It is true that when we met them in 1987 for the World Cup quarter-final, we knew that their rugby was free-flowing and magic. There was so much passing. And it is true that the French team had difficulties winning and beating them, for that matter.
There's plenty of support in Goro, but they're in touch.
Had this foot not just stepped into touch, the Fijians may have caused a major upset. But in the end, the French held on for a 31-16 victory, with a composure that was to serve them well in their next game, the epic semi-final against Australia in Sydney. Universally regarded as the best game of the World Cup, the first semi-final saw the Australians run into a French side studded with star names and near the top of their form.
He's over! Sensational try! He's 19th in test matches.
For their quality and verve, the tries produced by both sides simply took the breath away.
He's in his pocket. Greg Campese, he's there! Australia back in the lead. Chauvet, Blanco, elusive runner, Lagisquet, they won't catch him. Marvellous French try. French have rubbed in, picked up, it's a try! try has gone to Australia. David Cody. Now they said it's a right.
Following David Cody's try and a Michael Liner penalty, the Australians looked to be home and dry, 24-21 ahead. But the French stuck to their guns, and after Didier Combarbero's penalty brought them level, Serge Blanco delivered the coup de grace.
Blanco for the corner. I think he's there.
It would appear that it was a realization of a year's work, perhaps of many years' work. And above all, what makes me happy is that there was a suspense during that whole match that was exceptional. And then the fact of scoring the winning try, the try that opened the door to the semi-final. For me, it was an unequalled honour that I was able to feel. And above all, it allowed the French team a true place at world level.
To be knocked out in such a wonderful contest was, well, I remember the dressing room afterwards. It was a pretty quiet place, and quiet for a long time, because that was it. That was the end of our campaign that we'd worked so hard for. But sitting back here now, reminiscing, I still think it's one of the greatest games that I've played in, even though we lost.
In Brisbane, Welsh support assembled for the second semi-final in considerable numbers. But the players they'd come to watch had no doubts about the size of the task confronting them.
We did have a lot of injuries in the World Cup, and going into the semi-final against New Zealand, we had quite a few injuries, in fact. And although we had beaten England, and that had given us an element of confidence, we knew that playing against New Zealand was going to be a different kettle of fish altogether.
After earlier scores from Wayne Shelford and John Drake, John Kirwan weakened Welsh resolve further with 2 tries of his own.
Out to Kirwan, John Kirwan. John Kirwan going for the corner, and Kirwan, a brilliant try! All Blacks still going forward, only 2 metres out now. Kirk, the Fox, Taylor to Kirwan. Kirwan cutting his way straight through. Try number 2 for John Kirwan.
Welsh efforts were also undermined by the dismissal of Hugh Richards following an ill-tempered second-half fracas as New Zealand's forwards ground relentlessly on.
Easy try.
I mean, they did have a pack of forwards who swept all teams apart, aside. They were capable of winning the ball. Their forwards were so athletic and fit that they could recycle the ball, which meant that they could keep turning over the opposition and giving their three-quarters, ample opportunities to score.
After their draining match against Australia, the French then had to summon up reserves for the final against the All Blacks. On home turf and comfortable favourites, the New Zealanders were still taking nothing for granted.
Our game plan was purely based on defence, because we had to shut the French down. The Australians probably played a looser game. They allowed the French to get back into it. From our point of view, we had to play a very, very disciplined game based on solid defence.
In fact, it was the French defence which was the first to crack. La Gisquet letting in the returning Michael Jones for an easy score.
Jones!
9-3 down at half-time, the French held the All Blacks till the final quarter, when they scored twice in quick succession.
I think it may have been off a line-out. We hit the midfield through Joe Stanley, who made good yards. We cycled the ball blind. We had a line-up on the blind side. I was in there on the blind, screaming for the ball. And I think Grant Fox turned it back inside to David Kirk. As Kirky went through, John Kirwan pushed him over the line in the tackle. And that was the try that really sealed the game for us. It was a big try, and it was straight from the kick-off. Kirky made a tremendous break, and John Kirwan, he had Philippe Silla at his prime chasing him, and he still kept him, a tremendous handoff, and kept him off to score the try.
New Zealand. Look at the crowd.
The French scored belatedly themselves, but the side that had beaten Australia with such élan simply failed to appear. They lost 29-9.
There's the try. It finally comes for France.
In the absence of Andy Dalton, injured in training before the tournament, David Kirk stepped up to receive the Webb Ellis Trophy for the All Blacks, deserving winners of the first Rugby World Cup. With their win, Kirk's side carved their names in the great All Blacks Roll of Honour. The demands of their supporters had been met, for now.
There's unbelievable pressure being an All Black. You have to win, you know, because had we got through to the World Cup final and lost, you know, it wouldn't have been, well done, you got through to the World Cup final. So you lost, you know, so it's very important that we did win.
Although not a huge commercial success, the '87 tournament proved that the Rugby World Cup was a marketable product.
It was demonstrated by that tournament that there was a desire to continue with a World Championship of Rugby. And I think the Northern Hemisphere nations were probably a little reluctant to undertake it in the first instance, but having had it demonstrated to them that they could stage such an event, they moved into it in '91 in a very professional way, and they did a magnificent job.
The 1991 Rugby World Cup was staged in the United Kingdom, Ireland and France as rugby returned to the lands of its origins. It was at rugby school in the English Midlands that the sixth former called William Webb Ellis broke the rules in the school's rough and tumble form of football by picking up the ball and running with it one day in 1823. He has a lot to answer for. The game, evolving from that one act, spread throughout the world. By 1991 and the second Rugby World Cup, qualifying matches were required in which 39 nations took part. To link the game with its past, a goodwill message from the headmaster of rugby school was relayed by over 12,000 runners to Twickenham for the opening ceremony.
Without further ado, I now declare open Rugby World Cup 1991.
In addition to the 60,000 crammed into the famous old stands at Twickenham, over 2 billion people around the world could watch TV coverage of the opening game between holders New Zealand and England, the hosts. Rugby and its premier event had moved into a new era. The match assumed great importance for both sides. Once again, the pressure on the men in black jerseys to perform was intense.
There was a lot of expectation, the fact that we were world champions, and there was a lot of expectation to obviously try and produce the same quality of rugby that we had shown, not only in the '87 World Cup when we won, but certainly after that, you know, there was the All Blacks went on to perform very consistently, and I think a lot of people was wanting to see or waiting to see that happen against England.
They're going to go for it. It's all the way back to Rob Andrew. Goes for the drop goal, he's got it!
A Rob Andrew drop goal gave England a narrow half-time advantage, but their challenge fell away in the second half.
We froze. It was the opener to the World Cup. It was at Twickenham. It was against the holders. We were on home ground and sort of expected it to do well. The New Zealanders were not, I don't think, as good a side as they were in '87, and it was proved later in the competition, you know, when they were really taken apart by the Australians in their semi-final. You know, we missed an opportunity to beat them. I mean, it made for an exciting route, then having to go to France in the quarters and Scotland in the semi-final. But it wasn't a good opener, really, for England.
England lost 18-12, a try by Michael Jones, the difference between the two sides.
And there's the first try. Michael Jones in support. A beautiful try for New Zealand. Superb try. Lovely set move, working it wide on the right side.
If England's opening defeat had been discouraging, the experiences of the Welsh side in its first game at Cardiff Arms Park bordered on humiliation. Omitted from the list of 16 teams in '87, the Samoans made up for lost time with the help of a committed pack of forwards that included Pat Lam.
We were the last team to play for the whole World Cup. We were just busting to get out there, and when we did, we knew when we went out there that we were quite confident that we could win that game, and it's probably the biggest game in our history, and has really put our country on the map, and a lot of things have happened because of that particular game.
If the Samoans' first try owed something to luck, there was nothing suspect about their second.
He'll take on the Welshman. The crossfield for the moment, then straightens up. Tomalatai, Vaenga, Surely a try here for Vaifale. Going over at the corner. The second try then of this second half for Western Samoa.
Big tacklers and strong runners, the Samoans' exuberance is probably their biggest weapon, if, on occasion, also their biggest liability.
Sila Vaifale, the flanker there.
The guys love tackling, love trying to put someone on their backside, running with the ball. Maybe that's also one of our weaknesses, where everyone wants to run with the ball, and you know, we need to do a lot more of the tight stuff. But you know, certainly a bit of flair. The guys love expressing themselves, and you know, our whole culture is about you know, dance and song and enjoying ourselves. And I think it carries through to our rugby as well. We go out there to have a good time.
Can't get rid of the second.
After dispatching Wales 16-13, the Samoans went on to qualify for the quarter-finals by beating Argentina, watched by thousands of people back home, despite the lengths they had to go to.
There was no TV back in Samoa, and what they did in our stadium, they put up a massive screen, and New Zealand TVNZ helped set it all up, a live broadcast. So you had a situation, you had 20, 30,000 people going and sitting in the stadium at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they'd go in at 5 just to get a seat, and they'd be cover the whole stadium watching this big screen of the boys playing. And you know, the guys broke down in tears when we saw what was the support that we were getting from back home, and it was one of the main reasons why we did so well.
Oh, and beautifully gathered by Lima. Try for Lima in the corner.
Elsewhere, there was further evidence of the narrowing gap between some of rugby's developing nations and those at the top of the pile. In Pool 1, Italy put 30 points past a respectable USA team in an entertaining game at Otley.
Back goes Swords. Gary Hine coming in from the right wing. The United States for the moment looking as if they might make a mess of it. They finally do. Gaitan Yellow gives the scoring pass to fellow centre Baba.
Also among the try scorers, their gifted scrum half, Ivan Francescato.
Chance here for Francescato, the Italian scrum half. Tremendous play by him. Will he score? Oh my word! An outstanding try.
The youngest in a famous Italian rugby family, Francescato died tragically young earlier this year. Better still was the Italians' fight back against the All Blacks, where some brilliant running by Vaiga Tugamala had helped establish a 22-3 New Zealand lead.
Pass, no, going all the way himself. Oh my word! What a magnificent try then.
Apart from France, then I think Italy is the only other Northern Hemisphere team that is quite capable of matching the Southern Hemisphere in terms of physicalness. We were quite surprised when we came up against them. Their four-pack was so physically strong, and they were broad men, and they were just as aggressive as we were on the tackle and getting around the field.
Francesco.
Where they had folded against the All Blacks in '87, the Italians this time rallied impressively.
All the way himself to Petita. Petita gets there. Back from Hewitt then to Fox. Fumbles the ball though for once. The Italians are through. Bonami. Beautiful try.
Losing 76 in '87, the Italians lost 31-21 4 years later.
The Italians outside half.
In Pool 4, the Canadians went one better when they qualified for the quarterfinals with a win over Romania, Gordon McKinnon notching one of their 3 tries. The assurance of fly half Gareth Rees and Mark Wyatt at fullback were invaluable, but there were strengths elsewhere.
Smashing work by the forwards to hold the scrum rock solid.
Our forwards performed very well in '91, and I think a big part of it was that they were principally from one province, British Columbia, and they played a lot of club rugby together and representative rugby, and there was a special bond with that pack in '91, and they were able to stand up to the best of them, and they did a job on Fiji and a hard-fought victory against Romania.
Up at Murrayfield, another emerging nation, Japan, were hoping to upset Scotland. In an exciting match, it was the Scots who took the lead through a try by Scott Hastings. Japan added a drop goal, and this well-worked try to reach the half-time interval, 17-9 down. But that was to be their last score of the game, and Scotland ran out worthy winners by 47 points to 9. Down in Wales, the Argentinians were hoping to upset the pre-tournament favourites, Australia. David Campese scored early, and by half-time they seemed to be in control, leading by 20 points to 7. But the Argentinians came back at them in the second half and scored some stunning tries. Kicked into action, the Australians showed why they were the favourites by scoring twice more, finishing the game 32-19. It was the Australians' back division that was their most potent weapon, led at scrum half by their captain, Nick Farr-Jones, who, despite picking up an injury in the group match against Wales, made significant contributions throughout the tournament. Whenever Farr-Jones left the field, Michael Lynagh would take over the captaincy. But the team's outstanding talent was David Campese.
It's hard to imagine there's been another rugby player in the world quite like Campo. Modern-day players that have such a major influence on games tend to be more power-oriented, but Campo had that fantastic vision and amazing reaction time. I always said that when Campo touched the ball, the pace of the game changed upwards.
After victories against Western Samoa and Wales, Australia travelled to Lansdowne Road to play Ireland in the quarter-final. It was to be quite a match.
Lynagh then to Horan. Campese popping up in midfield. Tremendous run by Campese. Oh my word, what a superb try by David Campese.
Nick Farr-Jones had again to leave the field with a damaged knee, leaving Michael Lynagh in charge. In the second half, Campese's second try strengthened Australia's hold on the game. It had never looked like losing.
Little, and an easy try for David Campese then, his second try of this game.
But after clawing back to 15-12 through Ralph Keys and with less than 5 minutes remaining, Ireland scored through Gordon Hamilton.
Has he got the pace to get there, the big flanker? Yes!
Lansdowne Road went berserk.
It was a superb World Cup for us. I mean, we had a few stutters, but we just went out to that match and we just got stuck in from the start. I remember Gordon Hamilton's fantastic try, obviously, which was, I think, the try of the tournament. We just won those games with packed house, a good day, and just everything went well from the start.
With Keys's conversion, the Irish led 18-15. The next 4 minutes, Lynagh remembers fondly.
One thing I didn't want to do is go back and tell the team, don't worry, don't worry, this is all right, we can do it, which is generalisations. So I found out how long there was to go from the referee, and he said 4 minutes. Went back and said, right, we've got 4 minutes to go. So giving them, positive information, simple stuff, and basically said what we were going to do is kick off deep, they'll kick into touch, we'll get the line out. In the first half, David Campese had scored a try with him, just a really simple move coming back inside the centres on a cut move, and so I thought, well, why not? We'll call that again. When David got tackled here, normally I'm used to seeing him and me, we're all the same back, so when you get tackled, throw the ball away and get out of there as quick as possible. But David stayed in there, held onto the ball, went towards the opposition's goal line. We got the scrum put in. I remember thinking at the time, I thought, well, if Campo was listening, everybody must have been listening. So from that scrum, we called a move that we had practiced all during the week. We'd called it quite a few times during the game and said, why not call it again? It's worked. And once again, we got the ball, made the break. Campo was in a bit of open space and I was standing on his left shoulder, picked the ball up and dived over in the corner, all of sort of 1 metre run. And that was it. I think if I had to summarise a moment in my rugby career of, the highlight, that would have been it, that 4 minutes.
As they come off the field, still bubbling with emotion and probably nerves and an adrenaline letdown, I suppose. Michael Lynagh said to me, sorry, I kept calling the same move all the time, but we'd practiced it so many times I couldn't think of anything else. I thought it was one of the great quotes, actually.
In their 1991 quarter-final against France in Paris, England's concern was not so much the ball's appearance, but how to keep hold of it long enough to beat France. As the winners of Pool 4, France were on home soil at the Parc des Princes, the intimidating stronghold of French rugby. The physical battle began early and provided some memorable contests.
To go into Paris and win takes a bit of doing, and not many sides do that, certainly not in the Northern Hemisphere. So, you know, I think people remember that game. They remember the tackle of Skinner on Sessillon. They remember Skinner and Champ eyeball to eyeball, you know, and it's those kinds of moments people remember for a long time.
Against Stanford. Good win for England. Carling wide there to Guscott. Lovely break by Guscott. And it's a try for England.
Following Rory Underwood's try, England dug in, but could do nothing to prevent the French equalising through Jean-Baptiste Lafont.
And a try for France. Sessillon picked it up.
As the game progressed, it was England who dealt with the pressure best, as French discipline evaporated in the highly charged atmosphere.
To England in front of the French post.
Disons que c'est vrai que c'était un paquet avec Hackford, Doulé, un paquet d'avant.
It's true that the English were always playing a kicking game, but when they had the ball, they always managed to keep possession of it. That's why our players began to become agitated, began to make a lot of mistakes. In the end, though, England won because they were the better team.
It's over! A little chip over.
Following Jonathan Webb's dramatic penalty, England sealed a memorable victory through a try by Will Carling, as England's vaunted pack of forwards moved into overdrive.
It is a try!
That was the victory when everybody suddenly thought, oh, hang on a minute, you know, the boys are actually, you know, the boys are coming good here, because the side had been together for some time, and there were a lot of household names in that side. And then everybody thought, you know, yeah, there was a bandwagon that really started to roll after that game against France.
Up at Murrayfield, meanwhile, the Scots had put an end to the Western Samoans' entertaining run, thanks in part to 2 tries from John Jeffrey.
The try has been scored on that far side. What a try for Scotland.
England's preparations for their semi-final against Scotland proved far from ideal. From the frying pan of the Parc des Princes, their hotel arrangements required them to jump immediately into the fire of the Scottish capital.
We were bang in the middle of Edinburgh from the Sunday afternoon to the following Saturday, leading up to a World Cup semi-final. Now, as an English rugby player, it's not perhaps the best place to be for a whole week, you know. It'd be bad enough going there for 1 or 2 days in the build-up to a big game, but to have to spend the whole week there really created an environment of, you know, enormous pressure on everybody. I mean, on the Scots as well. This was a World Cup semi.
Feeling the pressure along with everyone else was Scotland's second-row forward, Doddy Weir, up against Wade Dooley, Paul Ackford, and an English pack that played effective, if not always attractive, rugby from the outset.
I was regarded as a novice, and to come up against Mr. Dooley and Ackford, it was an education, and that it was for the first couple of years. And Dooley, I thought that the English pack were dominant in all aspects.
Consistently under pressure in the set-piece areas of the game, the Scots conceded 2 penalties for collapsing the scrum.
Derek White is off the Scots, collapsing it, yes.
But when it was England's turn to lose their discipline, the score at 6-all in the second half, the poise of Scotland's inspirational captain and fullback, Gavin Hastings, deserted him.
And he's missed it, would you believe it?
Gavin would have put that over 9.9 times out of 10, you know, and unfortunately for him it was 6-all at the time, and there wasn't that long to go, and I think if that had gone over, the psychological lift to the Scottish team and the crowd and the effect it would have had on the English team is vital, absolutely vital.
Right, England have it again. What are they going to do this time? They buried it, they put it out. Andrew with the drop goal, it's there!
We then got our chance to go into the lead, and the scoreline suggests 9-6 doesn't really suggest a classic, and it wasn't.
For a talented side like David Searles, it was a disappointing conclusion to their '91 World Cup campaign. In the second semi-final in Dublin, the Australians met New Zealand. The match caused Michael Lynagh fewer palpitations than the clash with Ireland the previous week.
The first half we played there was probably, as a team, one of the best 40 minutes I've been involved in with an Australian team. And there's been a few good 40 minutes, but that was clinical. We took every opportunity against a very, very good side and went up to a pretty comfortable lead at half-time.
Campese, David Campese all the way!
Once again, David Campese was outstanding, scoring the first try and creating an opening for Tim Horan with an improvised pass for the second. Even to New Zealand eyes, the Australians seemed near invincible.
There was no one that was going to beat Australia on that day. I remember the Australians running out and just the look on their eyes, they knew that this was their tournament and they were here for no other reason than to win the World Cup.
Batchup, McCarhill, Kerwin again, tackled by Edgerton.
Nothing the All Blacks tried in the second half looked like breaking through the Australian cover, as the Wallabies mounted another fine defensive performance.
Fox and Innes. To the line is Crowley and Timu.
The match ended 16-6, a defeat the All Blacks took particularly hard.
And the final whistle goes.
We came in to the changing sheet after the game against Australia in Lansdowne Road, and me and Michael Jones, a good friend of mine, we decided to go out and shake the hands of the boys, and nothing we could say or do for the boys during that time could ever make them feel any better. And you know, I always remember just how proud and how privileged we are to wear the All Black jersey and what it really meant, not just to the country, but certainly to the individual who took part in that game.
If you want the west and the north stands, turn left, use gate 3.
With their supporters' enthusiasm reaching a new high, England reassessed their tactics for the final against Australia. Not all sections of the press shared the public's high regard for Will Carling's side. Irritated by descriptions of their forward-dominated approach as boring, England coach Jeff Cook and his team decided to play a more attacking game, probably to their cost.
Our strengths were in our forwards. If we'd have taken it on up front and played to our strengths, we would have beaten Australia on the day.
They basically played into our hands. Had they played a different type of game, perhaps they could have given it a shake. They did give it a shake. I think it was 12-6, wasn't it, the final score? So we didn't win easily, but certainly they played a game that they were not familiar with, and that helped us a hell of a lot.
Although initially taken aback, Bob Dwyer could also see the logic in England's switch of tactics.
They thought maybe, and I think it's not such a bad tactical ploy, that sometimes you're better off to attack the opposition at the opposition's strength. Give the same back to them as they give to you, because quite often people are not as well prepared to defend against their own tactics as they are against supposed opposition tactics.
Now there's room on the right. Winterbottom to Andrew, to Carling, to Webb.
England's tactics sometimes left them vulnerable to the counter-attack.
Horan having to jump for it, and he's away. Horan down the wing. The cover's across. It's still dangerous though, with Webb going back. And Opahengawi gathering it in two. The Australians trying to roll it up the side. England in trouble here. It's a try.
9-0 up following Tony Daly's try. The Australians had some measure of comfort going into the break, but the pressure returned later on.
In the second half, our real fears of England's ability to contain us in the set pieces, in fact, overcome us in the set pieces, came through, and we found it difficult to get any decent ball, and so England were able to really put pressure on us.
Little chance here. Halliday.
Despite their possession, England struggled to make the decisive break. Again, the Australian defence was impeccable, if a little fortunate on occasions.
A knock forward by Campese.
To England supporters, the Australians and Campese seemed to get off lightly, but to have awarded a penalty try would probably have proved a greater injustice.
He got away with it, you know. He was caught short a little bit in defence in terms of other players around him, and he took a risk and he got away with it. I'm not sure how really deliberate it was, but, you know, they defended really well, and they took their chances when they had them. And as I say, I think overall they were the best side during that competition.
And that's it! The final whistle blows. Australia said from day one they weren't coming here to run second, and they've taken the trophy.
I remember being very relieved after the game and just sort of, oh, thank goodness we'd done that. You know, we were expected to do it, we thought we could do it, but to actually go and do it, there was this wave of relief and satisfaction. At the dinner, I got a tap on my shoulder and it was Nick Farr-Jones. He said, Mike, you're going to have to speak, I'm sick, I'm going home. I said, yeah, sure, mate, right, that'd be good, fine. I thought he was joking. He said, no, I'm going home, bye, I'll see you tomorrow. I thought, oh, God, I'm nervous about all this. And then I thought, well, hold on. Everybody in this room would like to be in Nick Farr-Jones's shoes tonight. Then I thought, what a wonderful privilege, what an honour.
In 1995, the Rugby World Cup moved on to new challenges on a new continent. Where the 91 tournament had reminded rugby followers of the game's colour and passion in established playing countries, the 95 event in South Africa sang its praises to a whole new world.
1995, again, was a new learning curve in that it was a very much bigger tournament than 1991. It was beamed to a world market that rugby football could not have envisaged in 1987. The number of unions in the world playing the game suddenly escalated, and the whole structure of rugby football worldwide has altered.
Perhaps the biggest single alteration to its structure was made on the eve of the 95 final, with the announcement of a new tri-nation competition between Australia, South Africa and New Zealand, for which TV rights amounted to over $500 million. Rugby was to become openly professional in both hemispheres, and it was the quality of the 1995 Rugby World Cup that helped secure its commercial future. Staging the competition in South Africa was a risk, though, however attractive rugby had become to ambitious television executives.
There was a huge political or sovereign risk involved. The Cup took place because President de Klerk enabled it to take place by advancing Rugby World Cup sufficient monies to tide them over between the tournaments, which monies were subsequently repaid fairly soon after the Cup. And then when President Mandela came to power, he adopted and got on with it.
Led by the enlightened Francois Pienaar, the Springboks acknowledged that the world had misgivings about them as they represented a, for them, traditionally whites-only game. Pienaar's men were determined to show that things were gradually changing.
Just before the World Cup started, everybody in their hearts, yes, wanted us to win, but in their minds, they thought that Australia and New Zealand will be too strong for us because we haven't really gelled just leading up to the World Cup.
When we got on the pitch, it was great to be underway and part of the whole thing and finally be doing what we'd all aspired to do rather than waiting for it to happen.
Now it comes out. Is this a chance for Michael Liner? It is! A great score for Michael Liner.
Although it was the Australians who scored first, South Africa had nosed 14-13 ahead by half-time, thanks to a try by Peter Hendricks, who rounded Campese with comparative ease.
I think it was a well-planned game for us. You know, we knew that we had to put the ball behind them on the ground and put pressure on David Campese and make our tackles. It wasn't easy, you know. People thought that it looked easy, but it was. They gave us a really sort of tough game.
At this stage, well, Chick, it's all about time, I think, and unless you're doing a skip pass.
The South Africans moved further ahead through a Stransky penalty, drop goal, and finally a try.
Van der Westhuizen inside, and Stransky will score.
The Australians scored again, but the match ended 27-18 to the South Africans, who'd secured a key victory.
That's why it was such an important game for us. If we won that game, it would have been a relatively easier route going to the final, coming to the quarter-final stage and semi-final stages of the competition.
Pool B's crunch game saw Western Samoa take on Argentina in East London to determine the likely runner-up spot behind England. Blessed with probably the best scrummaging pack in the World Cup, the Argentinians looked like avenging their defeat by the Samoans in '91 and led 23-10 just after the break.
Goal line is looming. Try scores.
We were down and out against Argentina, and we didn't want the situation of having to go and try and beat England to make the quarterfinals. And we really dug deep, and against all odds, we came back and we won the game at the last minute.
And continues.
After fighting their way back, but still trailing 26-22, the Samoans scored through George Laupepe.
Junior Paramore. Laupepe. George Laupepe. Desperation now for...
Soon afterwards, Lam himself went in for the score that broke Argentinian hearts.
Loose ball. Paramore. Tackling. Lam gets it.
Creo que tuvimos
We definitely had the raw material to work with at the 1995 World Cup. We had the quality of players you need to make an impact. But for one reason or another, we just didn't make it happen, and that's a source of regret. In fact, I just don't like talking about it. It was such a big disappointment.
For the Samoans, it was another stirring victory, and they went on to meet their hosts in the quarterfinals.
Line up, thank this crowd, thank that crowd, this one, and we go in.
It was just such a huge relief. Again, a lot of tears shed through just the release of all the pressure, and knowing that we'd repeated what we did in '91 and proved that we're here to stay and that we weren't just a flash in the pan like in '91, like people thought we might be.
The Pool D decider was the match between Scotland and France in Pretoria. Towards the end of a game, high in commitment and quality, the French trailed 19-15, Thierry Lacroix keeping his side in contention with his fourth penalty from 4 attempts. With 3 minutes normal time remaining, but an extra 5 minutes injury time, the French were awarded a penalty.
Our coach, Pierre Berbizier, was telling us to pass it, but I was the captain and I said, no, we'll take the penalty. Thierry Lacroix converted the penalty, and then afterwards in injury time we scored that fantastic try through Emile Intermark, and with that turnaround, we won the game.
Second phase, Hubert, up to Tadorny, up there to Sanaim, the try from Intermark has got over.
That was the turning point, because if we'd lost that match, we would have played New Zealand in the quarter-final, who were very strong. Instead, we played Ireland.
The Irish earned their place in the quarter-finals as runners-up in Pool C by their narrow defeat of Wales in Johannesburg. Opening the scoring in a gritty match between old adversaries was Nick Popplewell.
Ireland rampant here, very close, and Ireland have scored.
That was the playoff of the group, really, for the second spot. There's an awful lot at stake. I mean, whoever lost was literally going home the next day. And we actually, I think we played reasonably well in the end.
Up to the Welsh posts. Hogan feeds Paddy Johns. And Wales are struggling here. It's going to be a try for Eddie Halvey.
In the second half, Ireland's third try extended their lead to 21-9, but the Welsh rallied in superb style.
And Ian Evans, and the fullback goes himself, hands on to Jonathan Humphreys. And
beaten 24-23, it was the Welsh who had to pack their bags for home. Earlier in the Pool C matches, both Ireland and Wales had been on the receiving end of something terrible unleashed by New Zealand. 6'5" and 18 stone, Jonah Lomu seemed to have the ideal physique for a back row forward. But he was so fast that All Blacks coach Laurie Mains put him on the wing, with devastating results.
And he pushes off two of them. And he pushes off a whole bunch of them. That's a Crossfield, Lomu.
We never knew who he was. We never even heard about him. All of a sudden, we saw this bloody giant running at Simon Gagan. And I think, in fairness to Simon, I think he was one of the few people that actually, I think he had a 100% tackle record against him. But I think he did score a couple of tries against us.
I don't believe this. He's got it up to Crossfield. And a try has been scored. That is stunning.
At the time, still a novice in an All Black jersey, Lomu insists he had little appreciation of the subtleties of wing play.
It was hard at first, especially, you know, playing against Ireland the first game, you know. I didn't quite know what I was wanting to do. You know, what I was supposed to do. I was starting to get nervous. Butterflies were flying around. I just wanted to get the ball in hand and run, really.
Lomu's 2 tries against Ireland sent advance warning to the Welsh, but they couldn't stop him either. He didn't score, he just made tries for his teammates.
But they didn't hold him. And he might get there yet, but Crossfield gets him.
The 1995 World Cup was to make Jonah Rugby's first international superstar, a status he never sought or particularly enjoys. He plays rugby for its own rewards.
I played the game for purely the love of it. You know, I thrive on, you know, on test matches. I just love running out onto the track, knowing I've got an All Black jersey on, and just going out there and doing the business, as I always say, you know, do the bizzo, walk off the track, and feel happy about what you've done that day.
Lomu's impact on the World Cup was enormous, but not nearly so profound as the World Cup's effect on the life of Max Brito, the young Ivory Coast winger, left paralyzed after being tackled in the Pool D game against Tonga. Financial support for him and his family was immediately forthcoming from the tournament organizers and other sources, and the tragedy touched everyone. Pool A's unfortunate, but this time wholly avoidable incident, was the brawl towards the end of South Africa's game against Canada, which saw Springbok hooker James Dalton and Canadians Gareth Rees and Rod Snow sent off. Peter Hendricks and Scott Stewart were later cited and banned by Rugby World Cup, and the floodlights had earlier failed. But such glimpses of rugby's darker side elsewhere in the World Cup were mercifully rare.
3 of them off the field.
Altogether brighter was evidence that, although beaten, teams like Italy, Argentina, Romania and Canada were still making strides. Even Japan showed class on occasions. They just happened to play the All Blacks on a day when they were in no mood for a compromise. The 147-70 New Zealand victory is a record scoreline that should stand for some time. In the first of the 2 quarterfinals, South Africa comfortably beat Western Samoa in a bad-tempered game in Johannesburg. Peter Hendricks' replacement, Chester Williams, scored 4 tries.
Mullin out wide, but it's
in Durban, Thierry Lacroix landed 8 penalty goals for France as Emile Ntamak's try killed off the hopes of the Irish.
To end with a remarkable 75-metre run.
After their defeat by France in the Pool D game, the Scots were obliged to take on the All Blacks in their quarter-final, only to run into the Lomu problem themselves.
First touch for the big man. Lomu goes around Craig Joyner. What a sight this is. Joyner misses the tackle. It's Hastings. Lomu through Hastings. Holds on, and this is going to be an awesome try. New Zealand on the charge, and Chalmers is injured off the ball, but Jonah Lomu with another chance here. Lomu goes round Craig Joyner. And the big man has scored.
Shell-shocked, the Scots could do nothing to stem the flow of tries in the second half, as the All Blacks underlined their status as tournament favourites.
And the New Zealand outside half is going to score a sensational try.
I personally would have put money on the All Blacks. They're a very, very complete side. They have a strength up front combined with the speed and panache of some great backs.
Picked up by Doddy
Weir himself contributed 2 tries to the Scottish effort. Scott Hastings' try also lent some respectability to the 48-30 final score in a match which also marked the international retirement of his brother Gavin. England's preparations for their '95 World Cup campaign were not helped by the old farts controversy, the term Will Carling had inadvertently used to describe some of his union committee men in a TV interview. Sacked as captain, he was reinstated a few days later. England finished top of Pool B and in their quarter-final met Australia. It was England who scored first, memorably through Tony Underwood. Despite the dominance of their forwards, England found themselves just 13-6 ahead after 40 minutes, and at 13-all 2 minutes into the second half. Fly halves Michael Lynagh and Rob Andrew traded penalty goals, each scoring 5 in the match. But Andrew's most telling contribution came 2 minutes into injury time, with the scores at 22-all.
Now comes the release where we see a drop from Rob Andrew. He's struck it well as Andrew.
It's an instinctive thing, really. A drop goal is much different to, say, a place kick, because it's during the course of action, during the course of the game. Place kick is a static thing. You know, I just knew as soon as I'd hit it that I'd caught it right. It was then a question of whether the radar was right. Wasn't bang down the middle, but it was, you know, it kept in between the 2 posts, which is the thing that matters.
In going to South Africa, the World Cup organisers knew they'd be taking on several problems. Bad weather was not thought to be among them. Yet South Africa's semi-final against France had to be substantially delayed by referee Derek Bevan, and might easily have been abandoned altogether when heavy rain returned to Durban's Kings Park just 10 minutes into the match.
The pitch was absolutely sodden. The kickoff was delayed 3 times, and so 3 times, as captain, I had to go and motivate the team and do my best to prepare them, only to have the match postponed again. It was so frustrating to have prepared for a game for 3 months, only then to have to play in a swimming pool.
We heard that if the game does not take place, the French team will be in the final because 2 of our players were sent off. And we felt that was very unfair. We just wanted to play the game. And fortunately, it did take place.
South Africa got to grips with conditions the best in the first half and scored the only try of the match from a rolling maul, finished off by Ruben Kruger.
How can the referee see? The referee has given the try.
With conditions no better in the second half, France forced their way back into the match and at one stage looked the more likely to slither through to the final. Thierry Lacroix's 5th penalty reduced the Springboks' lead to 19-15, but the home side stood their ground, what they could see of it.
I know in that game we were defensively huge again, we defended really well. And I think the thing that really stood out was James Small and one of the forwards, I think, managing to stop Benazzi probably 3 inches short of the line. Right near the death, which would have given them the win, really. At that stage, it would have been probably too late for us to come back and win it.
The South Africans held on to claim a place in the World Cup final.
And that's it. The whistle is gone, and South Africa have beaten France in this World Cup semi-final by 19-15.
Preparing for their semi-final was just business as usual for the All Blacks. Experienced and confident, they also had the tournament's most potent weapon, though in effect England would choose to ignore it, despite the experience of the other home nations.
think we felt, well, they've not defended very well against him. You know, our defence is good. Let's defend as we normally do, you know, and we'll be fine. We've got a good defensive record. Let's not worry about him too much. All right, yes, we've got to be concerned because he's big and all the rest of it, but if we defend as we have done for the last couple of years, then, you know, yeah, I think we can handle him.
England made their second big mistake that day when Tony Underwood, Lomu's direct opponent, accepted the challenge laid down in the haka a little too readily.
Actually doing the haka, I issued the challenge out to Tony. Tony winked at me, and you know, that's a sign of, yeah, I take your challenge, and I've actually just said, you know, I'm going to wipe that wink out of your eye, and I guess I was just on the lucky end of it.
There was nothing lucky about Lomu's 4 tries or the New Zealand performance that swept them to a 25-0 lead after just 27 minutes.
Under contact, this is the big man, Lomu. He's still on his feet. Lomu could score. That's a great try for New Zealand. Their tacklers are too far away. This is Osborne. He's got terrific pace as Osborne. Well, he has another chance for New Zealand. Can Osborne get inside? That's the flip pass.
In trying to counter the All Blacks as a whole, England left themselves vulnerable to Lomu.
We didn't focus on him as much as we should and ended up leaving ourselves exposed, really, to one-on-one defending with him. And we saw every time he was one-on-one, you know, he would just either go round the player or through the player. He almost needed to, you know, double or triple tackle him.
The carnage continued in the second half.
He's going to score in the corner. But there's a ball being taken away now. Here's another chance for Lomu. Can Lomu get past Michael Catt? The statistics say he's going to score his 4th try.
A few late tries flattered England. The match finished 45-29, but it was effectively over after the first 10 minutes.
We are behind you as a South African team. We are going to support you as a South African citizen and the people of rugby.
The Springboks took seriously their responsibility to win friends both on and off the field. Their efforts were bearing fruit, and in the final they enjoyed support from all sections of the Rainbow Nation. Their biggest problem, though, was what to do about Jonah Lomu. They weren't short of advice.
Everybody meant well. They phoned in and they, you know, everybody offered advice how to tackle Jonah Lomu, and you know, we had people phoning us 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, offering us judo lessons and karate lessons, and you know, it was, I would say it was a great sort of country effort.
After studying the match tapes, Springboks coach Kitch Christie and his players hatched a plan.
We adopted a defensive pattern whereby we would leave James Small right out on the wing and to force Jonah inside. A guy with his strength and speed, very difficult to pull down once he's taken you on the outside. So we weren't going to worry about Jonah Lomu that much. It just happened on the day when he touched the ball. Everybody was trying to pull him down. He's an awesome specimen. I mean, he's an awesome rugby player, and the guys did a really good job.
The South Africans were to have their own secret weapon in President Mandela, who, in a number 6 jersey, had visited the Springbok dressing room to offer some advice of his own.
I know he said something, and I remember it was definitely pertinent to me, myself, and my game, and something to do about fly-off play and the kicking, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but I remember afterwards thinking, bloody hell, it's impressive that he has taken the time to know exactly what each of us does and our roles in the team.
I didn't know that he was going to wear my jersey, and I just came into the changing room to see him wearing my jersey. It was just... It's mind-boggling, really, when you think back on it. And that day, you can only imagine how I felt as an individual playing in a World Cup final in front of our people. And we've got this wonderful man that has united the country, and he's wearing my jersey. I would run through a brick wall if I have to.
The game finally underway. The Springboks derived some early encouragement from containing Lomu and even tackling him on occasions. 5 minutes later, South Africa nearly scored themselves.
Is this going to be a try for South Africa?
Denied on that occasion, South Africa responded to 2 Andrew Mertens penalties through Joel Stransky, who levelled for 6-all. The Springbok fly half then put them ahead for the first time in the match, following more good work by the South African backs.
Stransky's got lots of time. Can he get it straight? Yes, he's got it. South Africa go into the lead for the first time
In the key
match.
passages of play before half-time, honours were just about even. But after Andrew Mertens levelled the scores with a drop goal 2 minutes into the second half, the All Blacks began to look the more assured.
Once again, New Zealand decided to go left, but this is Mertens' drop. It's there. Points all.
With just a few minutes of normal time remaining, New Zealand again created room for a drop goal attempt, but for once, Mertens couldn't oblige. Relieved, Stransky turned to the referee.
This is Mertens again. Has he got this drop goal? No, it swung wide.
When I looked and seen it missed, I turned and Ed Morrison was standing right there. And I've known Ed for some time, and I met him a few years ago, so I was quite friendly with him. And I just remember saying to him, geez, that was close, and here you were lucky. And I think that was maybe a little turning point, because from there on, I think we probably became a little stronger and turned the maybe fitter side and put a little more pressure on them from then on.
Convinced they could outlast New Zealand, the Springboks approached extra time with confidence. But 2 minutes into the first period, Mertens kicked a superb penalty.
Normally shown a lot of confidence. Has he struck that well? A great kick from Andrew Mertens.
8 minutes elapsed before Stransky was able to return the compliment.
Right on, half-time of extra time. And Stransky ties the game up.
Early in the second period of extra time, the Springboks found themselves unusually at odds over the next move from a scrum.
Because
I can remember quite clearly, Francois, we had a scrum on about their 22 on the right-hand side, and Francois called a back row move. And there were only 7 minutes left to go, and I shouted to Joost, cancel, give me the ball. And fortunately, he told Rudolf Strali to cancel, and he passed it back. And I kicked it.
Stransky looks for the drop. Has he got it? Yes, it's over. Stransky's drop number 2 in the match, and South Africa are in the lead.
I must say, I hit it really well. I don't think I've ever kicked the ball as well as that's probably the most sweetly timed kick I've ever kicked.
That is it. The final whistle, then South Africa win this Rugby World Cup final by 15 points to 12.
The match finally over, Pienaar accepted the trophy from the man wearing his number 6 jersey. An act of symbolism that delighted the rugby world and brought a nation together.
I just saw so much good things come out of a rugby tournament. People underestimate the power of sport. It's just, it wouldn't do it justice if I try and explain how it feels. It was just awesome.
In Cardiff, work is continuing on the Millennium Stadium, Cardiff Arms Park, the venue for the 1999 Rugby World Cup final. This year's tournament will see 20 teams playing in 5 pools based in Wales, England, Scotland, Ireland and France. Elsewhere, the building work continues on the Welsh squad, which hopes to share in the success enjoyed by the host nations in the 3 previous World Cups. They've a lot to do, but there'll be no shortage of support for Graham Henry's team come October.
There's no question that the World Cup will be a great success from a tournament point of view. It will get the profile around the globe that everybody is hoping. That means that Wales as a country will get the profile around the world, and perhaps people will see Wales in a different light following the World Cup. And coinciding with that, you know, there is a renewed enthusiasm about the performance of the Welsh team, and if they can get through to the semi-final, the final, I think Wales, for a small nation, will have done remarkably well.
69 countries will have been represented in the 1999 tournament and its qualifying rounds. 2 new teams to have made the final are Namibia and Spain. These emerging teams may not make an instant impression, but one or two others might.
As far as your Spain's and Romania's concerned, they're still a few World Cups away, you know, before making a dent like Italy hopefully will this year, and like Samoa will as well.
I think we'll be looking at a couple of major upsets in the '99 World Cup.
It's going to be a greater standard, and I think the gap is closed between a lot of teams.
The South Africans, Australians and New Zealanders will be coming off the back of Super 12, Tri-Nations and domestic rugby, and it's a long season for them. By the time they get round to October, November, they'll be tired.
The game has reached a sort of maybe a pinnacle in the Southern Hemisphere, and everyone is getting the opportunity to catch up.
I still believe that the three Tri-Nation sides will dominate, and I think you'll get either England and France or a couple of others who'll be up there with them.
There's only one World Cup where the host nation hasn't won, and that was '91. Now, the host nation in this case is Wales, and I don't think many people would say they're hot favourites to win.
I think Wales have got themselves into a very good position, and we've shown in their few games already last year.
Who will handle the away games better than others?
It's a good bet to go on the Southern Hemisphere teams, simply just their attitude and how they prepare themselves, and also the depth that they've got of talents to bring through.
It's going to be fascinating. I do expect a couple of upsets in terms of what the Southern Hemisphere think that they can come up here and beat Wales and Scotland. Well, they're in for a bit of a surprise if they think that.
It's going to be a real tough tournament, and I think the people are in for a great show.